helped me to do. Whether I was reading someone else's poems or working on a poem, stay vigilant, stay tuned, pay attention, notice this, see if you can connect it to anything else. I'm sure for many of you, it's been that way too. I hope you've found your ways through this mysterious past year, and I hope poetry has been a comrade, a befriender for you in all your days. A quote I found this year by the poet Tom Clark has also been with me. He says in a book called Truth Game from 2013, in a poem, The Edge of the Forest, poems ought to have memories. They should remember other poems. At this moment, the noisy city has fallen quiet, and the edge of the forest is abuzz with voices, the voices of poems beneath the old trees, talking quietly about the poems that were once here, but are not here any longer, remembering each other. This year, I feel we've all been trying to remember many friends we'll never have a chance to make now. Um, Sending out our love to the families of so many people who died, of so many people who suffered. Um, it's as if we became, in our isolation, a larger family in a different way. And so that poem struck me as the poems themselves remembering other poems, um, all the people in their homes remembering or thinking about all the friends we hadn't made yet. Um, we kept our 4 and now 5-year old grandson in our pod all this year, and he never failed to restore my soul when I was with him. And I'll just give you a couple of quotes from him this year, and then I'll read some poems. His name is Connor James Nye. These were all from when he was 4. Mosquitoes. It's okay if mosquitoes bite me. They're my friends. It's my life. Tearfully, I want to be 93. I want to catch up to everybody. I'm not 4. Let's say I'm 6. Well, really, he was 4. And then one day digging in dirt, this was quite a shock to me. I knew he knew my father's name had been Aziz, but my father died 14 years ago. He's seen pictures of him. I have never talked about where his ashes were buried. Um, but he was digging with a small red shovel in dirt. And this is what he said. Connor digging in dirt. Aziz, come out. Help me, Momo. Your dad might be down here. Really, Aziz, I miss you. And I never even met you. Are you still there? Well, I agree with William Stafford that children are the original poets, that they hold all we need of poetry within them. And sometimes we need to take notes on that language from them because it will soon be gone, absorbed by the literal world. Maybe not gone, hopefully not gone, but too often gone, unless it's encouraged or unless they try to keep it alive. And for any of you out there who've had a chance to be with children this year, I have no doubt they have kept you restored and a little more sane as the year went by. So I thought I would read um, just a random bevy of things, if that's okay. A number of poems from the most recent books and maybe a few that are not in any recent books. But here's one that's from the current issue of Poetry Magazine, which I was privileged to be one of the editors of. It's the first issue for young readers in all the many years of Poetry Magazine. So the 3 editors were asked each to donate a piece of writing to the opening, like a little introductory uh, piece to the magazine. So this is definitely a pandemic poem for me. Every day as a wide field, every page. Standing outside, staring at a tree, gentles our eyes. We cheer to see fireflies winking again. Where have our friends been all the long hours? Minds stretching beyond the field become their own skies. Windows, doors grow more important. Look through a word. Swing that sentence wide open. Kneeling outside to find sturdy green, glistening blossoms under the breeze that carries us silently. And there were so many more poems to read, countless friends to listen to. We didn't have to be in the same room. The great modern magic. Everywhere together now, even scared together now, from all points of the globe, which lessened it somehow. Hopeful together too, exchanging winks in the dark, the little lights blinking. When your hope shrank, you might feel the hope of someone far away lifting you up. Hope is the thing. Hope was always the thing. What else did we give each other from such distances? Breath of syllables, sing to me from your balcony, please. Befriend me in the deep space. When you paused for a poem, it could reshape the day you had just been living. This was for a dear college friend who died shortly before the pandemic began. And he had a lingering dying period, remaining very conscious through it all. It's called His Love. Gene Wesley Elder, leaving his life, wrapping household goods, kitchen cups, spoons, tiny tablecloths, grandma's china plates, in rumpled wrapping paper, snagged with ribbons, brown grocery bags distributed to friends, ordering no memorials. Give your money to an artist who needs it. Give my money to artists. Just call my lawyer, get the money. Take time, arrange things under trees, sit with them, make constellations of cast-offs till beauty rises. No, I'm not scared. I'm just doing what we all do sooner or later. Lucky I had time to savor, think about what I lived, parcel things out. I wanted the windows and doors left open, last long days, quiet filters, a few opera songs, deleted my emails after writing a final one. The end is near, artist going underground. Remember me, but even more, remember you. One of the last things Gene told me, left a message on my phone, was that I needed to listen to opera more and become a better fan of opera. And I have done that during this pandemic year. So listening to that. It is interesting to ask yourself, what are some things you never liked before this past year, or you didn't like enough, for which your appetite grew? There's a poem. This is for, oh my gosh, I think it's, no, it's still there. Okay, Dead Branch. I've fallen in love with the dead pecan branch outside my window. Small birds flock to all the twisty branches to sing for us. They open their beaks in harmony, chorus their little hearts out. At first I hoped a big wind would snap the branch off, bring it down. Now it's a treasure. It's been interesting to think about, when you stare at things long enough, how they befriend you. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You just need to pay that attention. Solitude. He said he moved to a bucket inside a cave. I opened a box that had been closed 20 years to find sleeping letters written to a remote satellite person. I tried to remember her at least. Who was this beautiful Margaret sending missives from Kodiak, Alaska? Now was the time to think more deeply of them all. Children of Gaza trapped in tiny rooms, beautiful people camped exhausted along the Rio Grande, patting the masa, stirring the beans on a fire made of sticks inside a ring of stones, no idea what came next. Could we ever know how much had been survived when we had the same house keys so many years? We could not know. No, we could not know. Our tiny antenna reached out, trembling, hoping for a message, clear advice on how to help. We were stunned by the smallness of our worlds. Here is the edge of your street, 3 scrappy leaves. From which tree did they fall? Here, the wrapper from someone else's gum. I could pick up trash without seeing anyone. No one would breathe on us in the iron chair back of the house beside the bamboo. Machines to connect us to the outside world. And now we would eat applesauce from cups, bake batches of biscuits, feel the quiet settling down like a sheen of future disappearances when no one will answer the number we call. Um, I was thinking after writing that poem of the first William Stafford poem I ever read. It was in a high school textbook right after my family had moved to Texas. And someone calls the old farm. Stafford calls the old family farm, and nobody picks up the phone. There's only birds on the wires. That always stayed with me. And then I was haunted during this past year by the dying of 2 other friends, 2 close friends, neither of COVID, but 2 friends for more than 40 years, one of them 50 years. And just thinking what happens then, how you carry all the memories. That friend is not there to remind you of things. And so I was thinking of the urgency, the daily urgency of texting them or calling their numbers and getting a response and finding out what they needed, how they were. This year of so much tenderness. So this was written to my Palestinian grandmother who lived to be 106. She was forever hopeful. She was never bitter. She was what would be termed a refugee, but I'm sure she wouldn't have called herself that, although she had lost everything in 1948. She hadn't lost the sky. Every day was your birthday. If light fell gently onto the windowsill, if no one you knew was tear gassed, if the children came home from school swinging their book bags and sat laughing, books in laps, to do the work you had never learned how to do. That was a good day. Sitty placed a cut onion to her face to temper the fumes, whispering, "Tell this to the soldiers. I was born in the sliver of time, the smallest eye of the apricot, the ripple of days one to another, cast upon wind in a far place. Don't know its name, maybe 5 kilometers from here. There was a well my mother drank from on the night I was born. I think there were horses. If you want to celebrate me, start everywhere." She didn't know her actual birthday, so we always teased her that we were celebrating it every single day. We were together. And during the nightmare of the 4 Trump years, as I felt they were, I had an opportunity a few times to hear the great poet Natalie Diaz, and one time read with her in Los Angeles. And I love her work. I love her presence, her spirit. So this is just called Natalie Said. The way I see it, no president has ever been that good for my people. She was speaking of the first ones, native residents of these hills and plains, mountains and rivers who are shadowing us now as we grieve and complain. And I don't know if I'll get around to reading any trash poems tonight from my book called Castaway, which is a book of poems about trash. I'm very happy that a certain Canadian trash pickup group is going to use this book as their anthem for teenagers this year, and we're going to do some events together through Zoom. But it was ironic. Many writers have talked about how it was ironic to have books, new books come out right on the brink of the pandemic a year ago, um, and then have all of their book events canceled except for virtual ones. Well, for me, I felt it was doubly ironic because I had all these things scheduled like public trash walks with teenagers to celebrate the coming out of my book. And all of those had to be canceled. I was gathering tongs and gloves and all this equipment we were going to use. And anyway, hopefully we'll still do that. I'm back to my favorite hobby of picking up trash in the downtown. But I guess this little tiny poem, which isn't even in the book, speaks to my lifelong obsession with trying to clean up whatever hood I'm in. How did we get here? Someone got scared. Someone said, I am better than he is. Someone threw a greasy styrofoam box out his car window. Someone else did not pick it up. So it's my job to pick it up. That would be the anthem for my book, Castaway. That's kind of the spirit of how it was born. And here's a poem called Farewell 2020, which I'm sure many of you could have written. We're so glad to see you go. We're sweeping you out the door. Bring a bulldozer. We'll roll you over 2 seconds flat. Pummel your crazy zeros. Trick your twos out of business. You scared me from the get-go, promising perfect vision, all that. Those of us who never had perfect vision felt skeptical from the start. We'll burn you with our matches. We'll singe you with our pain. Be gone. Give us a 1 for the morrow. 2021. Give us a 1. Forevermore. If you have everything, what do you have? Another day. A slip of time. Light, dirt, remembrance. My friend saying, love you, last night, as I softly closed her front screen door. This was written for the opening of Planet Word Museum in Washington, D.C., where I hope to go someday. And I hope all of you get to go someday. I am very excited about Planet Word. It's our museum. It's waiting for us. Welcome the word. And by the way, if you haven't watched the 30-minute launch for Planet Word, some night when you're having trouble sleeping, go watch it. You'll be as surprised as I was because I got to be part of it and read this poem, but I had no idea how great it was going to be. Welcome the word. Round in the mouth of the day, the word whirls and waits to be recognized, warming each time someone speaks or writes it. Words always willing to be shaped, cajoled, connected. Learn their histories, find their roots. Words have families too. Words want us to know them better. Slipped into lives, they blossom. Words get so lonely if they go a long time floating, weightless. You could carry a word all your life as guide. It will shimmer, befriend you. Your word will change. Um, and in the days before we heard about COVID, um, I was having a terrible, ominous feeling. I didn't know what it was. It's before Wuhan became part of, our common vernacular. I'd never heard of coronavirus. I never thought about any of that, but I just kept having this horrible feeling, especially I'd be out on a happy-go-lucky trash walk and suddenly this ominous feeling would come over me as if a train was about to go off a track nearby, um, or something disastrous. And one thing I learned fairly quickly was if you mention an ominous feeling like that to other people, they don't really want to hear about it. Um, so I felt a little solitary with my ominous feeling. And then when COVID came, I thought, well, there it is. That's what it was. And so that's what's in this poem. It's called One. A delivery man pounded the door. The boy said, that shook my bones. Only months ago, before this happened, on the brink, at the edge, I kept saying, something really big and weird is about to happen. No one responded or would say, isn't this weird enough already? After the evening news. At his father's funeral in Libya, everyone told Khalid, I Zena Wahad, our grief is one. Under the differences, beyond the many years we did not speak together, Wahad. When the sun sinks low, we will all be watching it, perplexed. I told the boy I had a bad dream. He said, have a new one. Um, how those kids keep saving us. There was a letter I found which really touched me because I hadn't seen it. It was in that box of old letters that I opened. Um, and now because we have Google internet stuff, I thought, well, I can find this guy. I could reignite this connection. But this is called The Road Between San Antonio and Comstock, Texas. Comstock is a very remote, rural ranch town near the border of Mexico, far west Texas. And it's the only place I've ever gone to work in my far-flung travels where my hosts told me to leave my car at the residence where I was staying with a family on a ranch, just leave my car and go get on that horse that they gave me. And he would take me to the school. And I said, well, that's great, but I don't know the way to the school. I don't ride that many horses. I've never been here before. And they said, the horse knows. Just get on the horse. He'll take you to the school. So it was a pretty magical week. He did take me to the school. I would tie him up every day and then he would take me home. And it was just an experience I've never had before or since. The horse's name was Frijole and the boy's name was Cody. The road between San Antonio and Comstock, Texas. I think of it as a bloodline, clean thread stretching west, the mind emptying so gently as it ranged farther from billboards, chains, farther from access roads, exits, deeper into sky. That road is why I love this state. Despite politics, pronouncements, the boy called Cody in Comstock, who wrote me a year after I visited his class, basically Poetry changed everything. It made me see where I was. Could you please come back and stay forever? Finding his letter again 30 years later, looking him up to learn he died young, a cowboy hat over his downturned face. I want to say, your roads are still stretching outwards, the fields you walked through. We are here, soaking in the mystery of time, trapped in our little houses, scared of a virus, feeling connected through the spaces, all of these new ways. And I remember you. And just a second here, there were three I have not read ever before that I wanted to read tonight, but as is my tendency, I've probably buried them from myself. But I'll keep looking for a second here. Thank you for your kind listening. I feel your presence is there, even though the poems continue to hide. Maybe they're here. And I feel the love that extends out from a place like Wick Poetry Center and makes us all know that we have family together. Well, sure enough, they're just completely hiding. Too bad for them. They won't be read, but I'll read a couple from the recent books. And then I think I only have a few more minutes and we'll have some questions and discussion. Mediterranean Blue. Well, this was written after seeing so many rafts and small boats crossing the Mediterranean and being in England with actually some teenagers from Syria who had crossed and who didn't know where their parents were. And it was just overwhelming. All they wanted was to talk to their parents, to find their parents. Mediterranean Blue. If you are the child of a refugee, you do not sleep easily when they are crossing the sea on small rafts and you know they can't swim. My father couldn't swim either. He swam through sorrow, though, and made it to the other side on a ship, pitching his old clothes overboard at landing, then tried to be happy, make a new life. But something inside him was always paddling home, clinging to anything that floated, a story, a friend, a food, or face. They are the bravest people on earth right now. Don't dare look down on them. Each mind a universe swirling as many details as yours, as much love for a humble place. Now the shirt is torn, the sea too wide for comfort, and nowhere to receive a letter for a very long time. And if we can reach out a hand, we better. I read that for those boys hoping their parents have been found, and for all the kids at the Texas border right now. And I just remembered that I printed up those poems, and here they are. Getting older. I don't know if any of you read this quote, but it's really been close to me since I read it by Roger Ebert, Roger Ebert, that where somebody asked him how he felt about dying, and he said, well, you know, I never worry about the years before I was born, so I don't see why I should worry about the other side of it. Getting older. How to love these numbers. Not to feel them as bricks stacking heavily toward a tipping point, but curved dancers, bending and reaching, leaning forward into memory that holds you everywhere now. Pillowing consciousness, days soft with remembrances, tender skeins of voices. I hear my father. What else can I do? Rowing through pain. Or my friend, I don't think I'm going to get better. Spoken simply as her request for different socks. No one gets older alone. No one disappears for the first time. We weren't here for so many years. Elsewhere, and this has a quote at the top from Molly. No matter how far the town, there is another beyond it. We're calling out to the far town. Hope you're finding enough food. Hope your bowls are filled with fruit. Hope the night air cups your dwelling gently. Did we ever think of you enough, far town? Were we able to imagine your rivers, light lifting your leaves? Did you sometimes feel the world forgot you? You were the world as much as we were. Palestine vine. Seeds wrapped tenderly in plastic. One package said white, one red. Hand lettered, mailed by friends I never met. They grew instantly, strangely confining themselves to one corner of the red metal container, as if a metaphor. I swear I planted them all over. Exquisitely leafy vines popped forth, glory and green lengthening overnight. I didn't notice the biggest one had twined around the rungs of the table. Today, moving the pot, that biggest vine ripped out, broke off. No! How could I have missed the simple wrapping of the tendril, suggesting happiness in that exact light? Its roots remain a broken stem. I wasn't evil, but I wasn't careful. This is what happens in the world. Now, soaking snipped vine in a glass of water, feeling the hope and weight of 70 years. So I haven't read those last three poems anywhere. They're new poems. I sent them off to India, a kind invitation from a magazine in India. I just wanted to share some brand new poems with you tonight. And what's even worse about that vine poem is I did it again. I can't believe it. Again, I moved the pot and ripped out another plant. So I don't even know if I'm ever going to see the flowers. But it's so heartbreaking when a little tiny carelessness sabotages good intentions. And may you never find that happening with your own poems. You may always, always go back to your own poems and work on them and see where they want to go and not be ashamed of them, love them anew. Some people have written to me that during this time of so much solitude, they feel they've become a little more gracious to their own work, and that would be, I would say, that would be a really happy thing if that could happen. And so before our question time here, thank you all for listening, and I'll read this one in memory of my friend Hannah Block, because she and I came to Wick Poetry Center together once and had unforgettable few days. And then later we tried to replicate that experience getting together in Houston, Texas, at the incredible Rothko Chapel for a similar event. And we talked about Wick Poetry Center and how much all the people there had meant to us. So thank you from both of us. But this poem for Hannah, and it's from the new book, Everything Comes Next. But this was a new poem that had never been published anywhere. Before you can, my Jewish friends are kind and gentle. Not one of them would harm another person, even if they didn't know that person. My Arab friends are kind and gentle. Not one of them would harm another person, even if they didn't know that person. They might press you to drink 45 small cups of coffee or tea, but that would be all. My Jewish friends have never taken my house, my land, herded me into a cell, tortured me, cut down my tree. Never once. My Arab friends have never built a bomb. We respect each other as equals. We look somewhat alike. We laugh similarly. We have never said the other should not exist. So where is the problem exactly? Let's be specific. Who and where and what is the problem exactly? You have to know before you can fix it. Thank you. Thank you all. Oh, well, my time, 6:45, so it's a good timing. Thank you for listening. You are beautiful people out there. And David, you are going to channel the questions toward me, correct?
Yes, I will.
Great.
And so we have the option, you can send a question through Q&A or in the chat in either location. Right now you're getting showered with praise and gratitude, Naomi.
Thank you.
These are not questions. These are utterances of deep gratitude for your voice and for your presence tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening.
I think you've stunned our lovely audience tonight.
Well, you know me, David. I'll just keep talking if there are
I
no questions.
do.
Yes, and I would like to say that you have so cultivated an audience for poetry there, a family of poets, a family of readers and listeners and carers, that it is so rich and wonderful to be in your presences. And, you know, when you go to a place where poetry has been appreciated for a long time, that is just the warmest feeling you have. And so I thank you all for gathering, for supporting Wick Poetry Center events, and for being there for all the good things they do. I see a question coming. Is there a question?
There is. From Nizreen, she asks, do you have a ritual when it comes to writing poetry?
I do. I go straight to the desk early in the morning. I may read a Dalai Lama quote. People gave me beautiful calendars this Christmas and a quote of African proverbs. That's where that the quote from Mali came. And every single African proverb is one you feel like you would like to think about all day. And same with the quotes from the Dalai Lama. So I read them first, and I sit at the table, one candle, cup of coffee or tea, and in the dark, just begin writing, and writing by hand. I've done it all my life. I still prefer writing by hand, sometimes even with a pencil. I love the little swishy sound of the pencil. And I just do it every day. One thing I've liked about getting older, if I may say this, is I feel like I'm able to work on poems at more times of the day than I used to feel. Like I used to feel like the afternoon was not a good time for me with writing because I'd be tired from the morning or preparing for the evening, or I don't know, but no problem now. I can work in the afternoon just like any other time. So I think developing a ritual can be very helpful for you, whatever your ritual might be. Even if you'd prefer to say, okay, every day from noon till 12:15, I'm going to sit at my table right in the heart of the day, the middle of the day. I'll do that. But when you develop a ritual, I do believe more is given to you and you feel more prepared for the writing moments. It's as if these things are gathering in your mind, your unconscious mind, waiting to come forth. So, yes.
Thank you. Kim Sibley has asked, how did you come to write Cross That Line, that beautiful poem of yours?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, when I was a child, my mother had, she had a whole collection of records that we listened to in our little house in Ferguson, Missouri, and one was by Paul Robeson. And Marian Anderson was another favorite singer. Mahalia Jackson. These were my mother's favorite singers, and so Paul Robeson's voice went into me deeply as a child. And then, I read more about him as I grew up, and I read a couple of biographies of him, and they were extremely moving to learn more about his life. And then I learned about that incredible concert at the Canadian border that he did. In fact, someone then even sent me, it was on tape. Someone had a tape of it. I've also managed to meet 3 people who sat in Paul Robeson's lap when they were children. And yes, 2 women and 1 man who said he was a little boy, and Paul Robeson, who was very tall and gorgeous, picked him up and swung him into his lap and gave him a hug after a concert or something. And all 3 people said they confirmed he was the most magical person they ever had a chance to meet in their lives. And I felt that just from listening to his voice. And then, of course, later when we had YouTube, I could watch videos of him in different movie performances. I guess as a child, I wasn't really aware that he was also an actor. I just thought of him as a great singer. So he's kind of a hero of mine. And, going to visit Rutgers and being on Paul Robeson Street and, knowing that he lived here or he went here to school, he's a personal hero. And the fact that, when he was confined to the United States and not allowed to travel to Europe because of his political beliefs, he suffered for his beliefs. And we all need to remember him and know more about him. I treasure him. So that's how the poem came to be born. And yeah.
Beautiful. Jess Stork has a interesting question. How do you think the pandemic will affect poetry going forward? And where do you think your poetry will go after this is over?
Wow. Well, the second question, I don't really know. I can't possibly answer, but I hope it will keep traveling out into the world and doing its jobs wherever it goes, what it does. I'd love to publish some more books down the road. But how the pandemic itself will affect poetry, I think many people have been drawn to poetry and needed poetry in a different way this past year. They certainly have written to me. I've had messages from all kinds of people who say, I never really cared that much for it, but now I suddenly need it. Can you help me? Who are 3 people I should read? Um, should I develop a practice of writing? Can I love poetry? Can it help my life even if I don't try to write it myself? I've had all sorts of questions from new friends out there this year. So I think we've had a hunger for a timeless timeless voices of truth, telling truth, and we've had a hunger for one another's lives. Like what's everybody else doing right now? And poems take us into their worlds, other people's worlds, other generations, um, other experiences, troubles. Um, so I think that in the big picture, this year will have been good for poetry because it will have stirred up a lot of new interest in it. That's how I feel anyway. I've worked in a lot of classrooms virtually with kids I have never met in person, and their poems have been astonishing. I would say, kind of across the boards, better poems, more deep thinking coming from kids who've been trapped in their homes all year. Um, and also some kids who seem to have very mixed feelings about their own potential with poetry. In one quick hour, writing the most exquisite and gorgeous things. And to me, that means something, that kids are hearing one another, kids crying about one another's poems. Um, it's just, that's been amazing. I judged a poetry contest for Arab kids writing in English. That was interesting because I got to read so many poems from all over the Middle East. Um, and it was anonymous. I didn't know whether it was girls, boys, what countries they were from, unless it mentioned something specific in the poem. But I thought, all these beautiful young poets out there, who are they're just waking up to their voices. So I feel very encouraged, um, by what this year will do for poetry in the bigger picture. And I think I'm not crazy to say we all love one another more. I think that's a kind of a blanket statement that could be made. I think human beings love one another more. I mean, look at the global vaccine poems, on the beautiful Wick Poetry Center global vaccine poem site, Dear Vaccine. People are hungry for one another. They are lonesome to be with one another, sit with one another. Um, so I think that love is a big part of poetry. I think poetry gives us a more of a sense of tenderness and love. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I'll try to answer really fast. Let's have questions really fast. I'll give quick answers.
Two questions that link together. Ryan Hediger and Jessica Jones are asking about process. When you write a poem, what convinces you that it works and that it's worth chasing? Or how do you know what to throw out after all that comes to you and what is kept?
Well, I guess when I go back to it, like the next day or a few days later, when I find it again in my notebook, um, if I'm still interested in it, if there's something in it I like better than when I first wrote it, if right away I start seeing things I might make better about it, ways I could develop it, if it keeps my interest, if it holds my interest, well, then I, often want to stay with it. But of course, there are so many things I put in my notebook that I just would keep fanning past and think, well, hi there, thanks. See you later, goodbye, and just pass on by. So I don't put that pressure on, every single day has to produce a poem. I'm very impressed by people who've done things like that. Like we have a friend who was on a webcast with us recently, David and I do, from London, Jacqueline Safra, who wrote this amazing book, 100 Lockdown Sonnets. And every day was writing a sonnet for 100 days. And it's just a fantastic book. That's so impressive to me. But, you don't have to write a poem good enough that you would share it or pull it into a book every single day.
Naomi, here's a comment, then a question that I think addresses what we've been talking about tonight. Stephanie Greer says, even your poems about dark or difficult topics, such as the last one you read, shine with a kind of light. This is a balance I've struggled with during the past year in particular. Do you consciously work to transform painful experiences to some extent?
Wow, that is a beautiful question. Thank you for asking it. And we surely have had a lot of darkness. Um, I don't think I consciously work to do that, but I think it's a gift that poetry has given me. It's a way that poetry has served me. And, over the years, many people have challenged me about, how can you continue to have hope about for Palestinians or Palestine, or how dare you have so many Jewish friends? I've been challenged in all kinds of ways over the years. And it's so ridiculous. And I just think, as I was writing that poem, it came to me that none of that's not the problem. There's some other problems there that are political, that have to do with, like land and just equivalency, and who has human rights and who doesn't, and who gets a vaccine and who doesn't, and who's in jail for nothing and who isn't, and just all of these basic questions. So you have to go to the heart of it. But the poem, like that poem, for me, it went somewhere that I didn't know it was going. I just wanted to sing praises to my Jewish friends and my Arab friends. That's where I started. I had no idea where I was going to end up. But I felt like the poem help me. So I think poetry does serve us and it takes us to new knowledge. And I think my beloved mentor, William Stafford, always believed that new things happened in his mind because he had sat down with a piece of paper to write about what he knew, what he didn't know. He sat down and he went somewhere. So thank you for all these questions. I apologize for those that we didn't get to, but I asked David if I could possibly close with a poem. So here it is. And this is an older poem, but I have thought about it this year as it rained, as it froze in Texas, as we now have the hottest April on record after the coldest February on record. So everything's kind of in shock down here. But as I carried a different boy, as I watched different people carry different children, but this time most of them were wearing masks. Um, I wish you all health, strength, hope always. Thank you for listening. Shoulders. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say, fragile, handle with care. His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. I realize that poem now is dedicated to all the healthcare workers who did what they did with all of us, everywhere, anywhere they could, who tried to help people anywhere they worked, to all the people who stepped out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you all. Thank you for inviting us into your space tonight.